Were, were the Beatles before the groupies, or did you have those?
Oh, we had them, yes.
I mean, not did you have them, but were they
didn't
around?
call them...
Well, did you have them? I guess
They
that's
were great, Tom. They were great. They didn't call them groupies then. I forgot what we used to call them. Something like slags, you know.
Slags.
So there's some word they had in England for it. And, yeah, I mean, one of the main reasons to get on stage is it's the quickest way of making contact, you know. And, you know, you went to see those movies with Elvis or somebody in it when we were still in Liverpool, and you'd see everybody waiting to see him, right? And I'd be waiting there, too. And they'd all scream when he came on the screen. Right? So we thought, that's a good job. That's why most musicians are on stage, actually.
Why is that?
To get a little, Tom, to get a little extra.
What, a little extra money?
Yeah, you know what it is. It is 2 o'clock, right? We're all right.
No, you got to be kidding me. Is that one of the big reasons, the sexual aspects of singing? That's the reason most of these great
I would say that any
are on
performance...
stage, that they don't care about their music, that they're just up there for a little extra?
No, but that is a good incentive for all performers. Let's not just pin down the poor musicians.
And it wasn't, well, you speak for yourself, John.
Well, all right. I can't speak for musicians then.
No, and please don't speak for those of us who toil in the television vineyard, because that is the farthest thing from our minds.
Of course.
Yes.
I understand that.
Now, and you
do
say...
the news as well.
And then I could assume that when you say that going on the stage to perform music is one of the best ways of making contact, that what you're saying is it's one of the best ways of making sexual contact. Hmm?
Well, yes, we're not looking to have a card game. That's what it is. You know? I mean, you don't go on stage and think, that would make a nice card game.
Most of the young women who follow the rock groups then were very, very young. They were in their teens. And I just wonder if ever there was a problem where an irate father or mother might have called the dressing room on occasion and said, hey, what's going on down there? And you probably said, quiet, there's a card game going on.
Yes, sure. No, I mean, in the very early days when we were playing dance halls, there were just a certain type, which you call groupies now, which would be available for functions at the end of the night. Mm-hmm. And in general, most kids would just go home with their boyfriend or whatever, you know. Mm-hmm. And there was always a small group that just went for any performer. They didn't care whether it was a comedian or a man who ate glass, you know, as if it was on stage.
Right, the guy who swept up after the elephants. Hey, where are you going?
Right. And actually, the people that work for rock groups usually get more action than the actual rock group, right?
Don't say right to me, because I don't know.
You can imagine it, Tom. They audition.
Right.
They get the cream of the crop, you know. If you want to see Elvis, you got to see me first.
You said earlier that it became boring to stay with that group. Why is what you're doing now not boring when that was?
Because I can change musicians whenever I like. And it tends to get into a format, you know. Because we were together much longer than the public knew us. You know, it wasn't just from '64. I was 24 in '64, and I've been playing with Paul since I was 15. And he's very nice. and George about a year later or something. So it's a long time we spent together in all the most extraordinary circumstances, from, you know, lousy rooms to great rooms. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't just the public just think, oh, you were only together 5 years, we've only got 5 million records, you know. But we were together a long, long time, and we just became stale musically.
But how are you not stale musically now, aside from changing
musicians? Because I'm interacting with different musicians. To me, they're musicians. They're not just, you know, it's not like, to people, they're all stars, right? It's like having Elton John and Elvis and a few people playing, you know. To me, it isn't. It's just musicians, and to them, it's the same. So if you play with the same person all the time, you get into a rut. Even if you played tennis with the same person.
It's boring.
It comes to a time when you know every move, and you have to find somebody else to play with.
As you listen to music today, I don't know if you listen to the radio a lot or if you listen mostly to records, but what are things that you see that you think are good or bad?
Well, that's pretty general. I like the disco music that's out now, which is great music. I like the thing that happened in Jamaica called reggae. There's a music in Jamaica called reggae, which has been around for years under the disguise of ska, blue beats, etc., but it finally formed itself into reggae. And that's about the really newest thing that's happened in music in the last 5 years or 6
Do you
years.
think anything new happens to music, or is it a continual series of cycles, and that maybe 100,000 years ago somebody had the same kind of beat or the same kind of whatever it is that makes it different, and that maybe the whole thing is just going in cycles, or are we in fact discovering things all the time?
I think there's something to the cycle thing, but I think if you apply the cycle idea to it, that's a cycle for everything, not just music. You know?
Mm-hmm.
But it's snowballing either just because of electricity or because of all the garbage everybody picks up, because we keep inventing things, right? So it does change, and it has cycles in a way, like I think the whole whatever it is, the universe is a series of cycles. But the music has to change because they keep inventing new things. Like, films change, it's now video, so it's in that way it's different.
But don't you know that in about 1988 there's going to be a group come out that is going to pick right back to the sound that you guys had since you're 15 years old, and all kinds of critics and all kinds of writers are going to say, wow, look at this, we've got this whole new sound that's reminiscent of the Beatles back in the 60s.
Well, they'll probably be playing Grurch-blobs and Zach-dungas, right? They'll have new instruments. And although rock and roll was brand new when it came out and excited everybody, it had roots in blues and jazz. So in that way, they would have their roots in the 60s, 70s, and possibly further back. But you can't say that rock and roll is like the 20s music, although if you look for it, you can find out where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find out where Beatles music came from, or any music came from. It's just like it has its history.
Before we get into your immigration status, and we'll bring Mr. Wilds out at that time.
Hooray!
Hooray! And that is a controversy for you and for
Yeah.
people who would want you to stay in this country. You've been involved in some other mini controversies, like the time that you were on the cover of the album without any clothes on, and like the
Yes.
time that you and Yoko had everybody or invited people to come into the bedroom while you were there.
We held a bed in for peace,
A bed in for peace, exactly. Why do you do those things? And I don't ask you that because I want to engender some flip response from you, but what does that gain for you as John Lennon, or what does it gain for the cause of peace in the case of the bed-in for you to do something like that?
Yoko and I, when we got together, decided that whatever we did was going to be in the papers, whether it's Richard or Liz or so-and-so gets married, or whatever people like us do is going to be in the papers. So we decided to utilize the space we would occupy anyway by getting married with a commercial for peace and also a theatrical event. And the theatrical event we came up with, which utilized the least energy with the maximum effect, was to work from bed. And what we virtually had was a 7-day press conference in bed, where the press fought. The first day they fought at the door to get in, thinking there was something, sexy going on. And then they
Licentious.
that was the word I was looking for. And they found two people talking about peace, And reporters always have 5 minutes with you, or 10 minutes with you. We let them ask anything for as long as they wanted for 7 days. And all the time we just kept plugging peace. And the story that came out was John and Yoko do bed in for peace. And we were just promoting peace, like you promote any product. They promote war, join the Marines, join this. We were promoting peace.
Mm-hmm.
The Naked album cover was less general than that, meaning we didn't have. That was one of the first things we did. We thought, we felt like two virgins. That's what the album was called, because we were in love, just met, and we were trying to make something. And we thought, to show everything. People are always looking at people like me, trying to see some secret, or what do they do? What do they do? Do they go to the bathroom? Do they eat?
Do you?
I do, quite a lot. And we just said, here, And that was in 1968, and all hell broke loose. But now they're jumping around naked all over the place, right?
Yes, they are, as a matter of fact.
Right, so we were just sort of ahead of our time.
What difficulties are there for people who are in the public eye, who know, as you and Yoko did, that whatever you do, it's going to be picked up in the press, and you really can't go out and, I suppose, have a quiet dinner or go to the park or go to a movie or something like that? What difficulties are there in your life when there's such adulation for you and such curiosity about what you do all the time?
Well, that's cool, because that's part, I reckon that's part of the
What, part of the
price,
territory?
You know? Yeah. But, you see, having gone through the Beatlemania thing, nowadays it's nothing like that. I mean, I can walk down the street and somebody just say, "Oh, hi, John," and they usually say, "How's your immigration?" You know, if it's in New York, right? And they don't hassle me. I might sign one autograph, two autographs, you know? And I don't get hassled. And I went through that period where I actually couldn't go anywhere. And so now it's like heaven. I can go and eat. We go and eat. We go to the movies. We go wherever we want. If there's an announcement, like there's an opening and everybody's going to be there, you get a lot of noise and cameras and flashbulbs. But if we just decide to go to dinner, it's cool, you know?